Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today we're going to be looking at Ascension Volume 2 from Steve Minty. This deck was launched on Kickstarter in 2020 and is inspired by the popular TV show Game of Thrones. I mentioned it's a Volume 2. Volume 1 was released in 2019 with this pair of decks here. You have the Golden Lions deck, which was inspired by House Lannister, and then the Silver Wolves that were inspired by House Stark. But in getting to Volume 2, went after two different families, houses, or factions, whatever you want to call it. And both of them are sort of dragon themes. You have the Blood Dragon in the black and red here that was inspired by House Targaryen, and the blue deck here called the Dark Abyss, inspired by the White Walkers of the North. Very cool, striking designs. Now, I've mentioned Game of Thrones a few times. This is definitely not a Game of Thrones licensed set of decks by any means. It's just inspired by the popular series, and so draws a lot of design elements and color schemes from that show. Now, we're going to look at both these decks in turn. We're going to start out looking at the Blood Dragons deck, and then we'll come back to the Dark Abyss. All right, Blood Dragon is done in a striking black and red color combination. I really like the mixture of black and red. It's done on a soft touch finish to the tuck case, kind of a matte feel to it overall, all in black. I kind of wish it hadn't been done on soft touch. The reason for that is that soft touch has a really reflective quality to it. So the tuck case looks a little bit washed out or faded depending on the light that you have it in. I wish it had been kind of a deeper, truer black. But nonetheless, that red foiling and embossing on here really stands out nicely against the black still. You have the dragon's head there in the center with the eyeball right there in the middle. Ascension, big bold letters across the center, and then the name of this particular version, Blood Dragon, in tiny letters right there above the dragon. Each one of the decks draws on a couple of characteristics of the house that inspired it. This particular one draws inspiration from strength and nobility, and you can see those written there. The border is kind of a dragon scale inspired design that's done in a mixture of red ink and foils. Very beautifully done. As you turn to the sides, it says Ascension once more, and then strength and nobility, those two traits mentioned once more. Same thing on the other side. And the bottom has some ad copy for Steve Minty and some very minuscule writing down here that mentions that the deck is printed by the USPCC. Top has a few more design elements, scale inspired elements, and then the back has a foiled and embossed version of the back of the cards. Love how those big, bold red dragon heads glow in the light. Finishes up with a custom die-cut tuck seal that wraps all the way around the top of the tuck case, all the way to the front, and has that emblem with the dragon eye in the center. Really like that look. More foiled elements on the inside and nothing printed on the interior of the tuck case. So that's the tuck case. Other than maybe wanting a deeper black, I think it's a really nice tuck case. And the soft touch and the embossing is always a great feeling combination. Just has that luxury feel to it. All right, getting into the cards, we'll start with the back design. Here it is. All done in black and red, black card back, and then the red ink design on there. Big, bright, bold, primary color dragon heads are obviously the main draw on these. I love the sort of angular feel to these with those horns rising up. The dragon eyes provide nice little pops of interest. And I love that it kind of maintains a two-way back design with those two heads meeting in the center. The extra kind of darker elements back here, all kind of reminiscent of dragon scales, again in those overlapping scales, and then finishes out in that thin black poker border that's sort of broken up by little elements of the design. So very nice back design. I think it's very well designed back. All right, the Jokers. Jokers come in the form of a diptych Joker, pretty common for Steve Minty decks, but you have the two cards that come together to form a single image, kind of a polygon looking depiction of a red dragon perched up on a rock. I like the look of it overall. Definitely not the super highly detailed image. The other Ascension decks all kind of have that same feature, so you don't see like individual scales or anything like that, but still a striking and powerful image. More bordering around the edge as well. So that's your 2 jokers. You get a pair of gaff cards. I think that's a little bit odd for a deck that's definitely not a Magic deck, but you get a double backer and a blank facer. Probably could have gone without those in my opinion. All right, turning to the cards themselves, and start with the Ace of Spades, the Power Ace. Features that spade pip in the center with the dragon's head right in the middle, Ascension by Steve Minty underneath, and then a really prominent border, another common feature for Steve Minty decks. Lots of heavy border around the edges. Again, kind of takes on the shape of dragon scale inspiration within it. And then you have the pip and index in the corner. The index done in that red, so the red on red, and then the pip almost cut out to reveal the black underneath. So you got that spade pip. The other 3 aces are all extremely prominent aces as well. All of them with a dragon eye in the center of a large pip in the middle. All of them are some shade of red. The diamonds and hearts are redder, if you will, kind of a brighter red, and then a darker red on the ace of clubs. And then the pip and index in the corner, all of the indices are the same color, but then the pips in the corner, you have either red or black, depending on the card. So that is the 4 aces. The number cards are all fully custom as well. Again, really featuring that super heavy border around the edge and then the really tiny pips there in the center. But they are custom pips, each one featuring a single dragon eye in the center of the pip. Nice, big, easy to read pips and indices. And I love that the pips, or the pips are included in all 4 corners. And then as you go through, you'll see those really small pips in the center with a custom layout to match. So I like what's done on these. I like the design of the pips overall. I think they're really interesting. And the small pips with that big border is something that I really like in this deck. I think it kind of gives a prominence or a, to the deck overall. So there's the clubs and then into the hearts. That's the number cards, but let's get into the court cards. I mentioned that these are inspired by Game of Thrones. So these aren't characters specifically from Game of Thrones, but maybe they remind you of different characters from the show. Not really sure. But all of them are going to feature these different characters. The blonde hair, definitely characteristic of the characters from the show. And each one features kind of a different image. Many of them carrying weapons, and all of them have this sort of slightly Asian inspired garb, which Steven mentioned was something he kind of did on purpose to kind of lend itself to the dragon theme once again. I really like this one right here with the long sword kind of carried over his shoulder and breaking the border. So the one card where the sword breaks the border. But there's your spades, and then into your diamonds. You'll see the diamond pips that are forming the center border here, each with a dragon eye in the middle of them. And just really interestingly drawn characters. Definitely on the simpler side, if you will. I mean, there's not a lot of detail in the faces, just some kind of really subtle shading, but still a really striking look, especially with those glowing red eyes on some of them. And then there's your hearts. Mysterious assassin there is the Queen of Hearts. So beautifully drawn courts, as always with Steve Minty. I'm a big fan of those. So that is the deck. And before we talk about handling and uses of the deck, let's take a quick look at the Ascension Dark Abyss deck. Now this one's inspired by the White Walkers of the North, and so really takes on an overall look that's inspired by the ice and cold of the North. So you've got the dragon here now in blue that's kind of made up of shards of ice going up, and then the background and the borders here all take on that crystalline structure as well, with different shades of blue all over. The foiling on this one is really vibrant, and I love it as the touch for the ice, all done in that holographic rainbow foil. That glow really just gives that ethereal feel to the deck overall. As you turn to the sides, Ascension, and then here the words that inspire this one are Death and Chaos. Same thing on the other side. And the back, you get a little preview of that crystal inspired back. And again, lots of hits of that holographic foil. There's your blue tuck seal. Again, cut with like kind of sharper angles. Features the snowflake in the center. And that finishes out the Dark Abyss Tut Case. I think if I had one complaint, it's the name of the deck. I think Dark Abyss, I have to mentally remind myself every time that the blue deck, despite all the light and brightness on it, is the Dark Abyss deck, because it really feels like this one could be called Dark Abyss and fit just as well. But that's the name that he went with. All right, looking at the cards themselves, the back design, here it is. I like this a lot. Lots of sharp angles all the way through as those crystals grow all the way around. The crystal dragon in the center as well. Lots of shades of blue, and the background isn't a solid color either. You'll see lots of different shards of color. It's subtle, but really well done with the kind of darker blues and purples forming that background. So really beautiful. And it's something that as you look at the back design, you know, if you look at this in a fan, those colors really kind of show up and pop. It's really nice color scheme, I think, on these. The Diptych Joker is also swapped out now for an Ice Dragon, kind of propped up on a ledge there. Beautiful design. Same kind of two Gaff cards, the Double Backer and the Blank Facer, although Blank Facer features that same crystal-inspired background of the cards. And then all of the cards feature a really similar design, but all swapped out for the blue and ice motif. I really like this Ace of Spades, that dragon in the center with the big, bold crystals behind him. Really like the look of that. The border on all these, still big, chunky border, this time now more crystals, and the large pips on the aces as well. All look like, you know, big, bright crystals. I prefer on this one because whereas the other one had just shades of red as all four suits, this one I like having the distinction between the bright blue and the bright red as the two different colors. As you go through the numbers, more of the same, crystals custom as the pips, all nicely, easily recognizable while being full custom. And I like that, you know, you get a better contrast between the traditionally black and red cards. I think if you were going to use this for gameplay or something, definitely makes it a little bit more usable of a deck. So there's your clubs, and then into your hearts, those kind of elongated heart crystals. And then the courts are all going to be in keeping with the other deck, just kind of characters maybe that would be members of the Night Walkers or of the mysterious Dark Abyss faction. So here are the three spades. These represent sort of the generals. And these are probably my least favorite court cards of the bunch. They're meant to look much more ethereal, but there's almost no detail. Like they're just glowing and completely made of ice. I wish there'd been more detail to kind of mix these up a little bit. They look to me a little bit washed out. I get what he was going for and kind of going for the generals more covered in ice. But for me, these just kind of lose some of the detail and weren't my favorite of the court cards. The rest of the court cards, though, don't represent the generals anymore and just represent people who were basically converted by the White Walkers to be part of the clan. And so you'll see these kind of frozen blue characters with their dead white eyes. Very mysterious look to them overall. And these courts I like a lot better than the spades. So all the rest of the suits are going to feature different characters that were converted. Even these with the blue skin against the white, really beautiful look to them overall. This is probably my favorite one right here with that broken sword over his shoulder and the King of Clubs. And then there's your hearts. So very much like these, with the exception of the spades, but still a beautiful look overall. Now, as far as handling, these do handle really well. You saw the fan before. They fan beautifully. That color, especially on the Dark Abyss deck, really pops out as you use this in fans. It's printed on USPCC stock with air cushion finish, and they always handle really well right out of the box. So no complaints whatsoever on the handling. So nicely done on that front. As far as uses of the deck, I think it would make, especially if you had a Game of Thrones fan, would make for a great gameplay deck. Really interesting one. Definitely still easily readable enough to still be a functional deck, even with that high customization. So I think it'd make an interesting one for some Game of Thrones fans to use for gameplay. But really outside of that, I think it's just more of a collector's and art deck. One that you want to appreciate with that really striking tut case on the shelf. I think that's really where its home's going to be. So maybe some specialized gameplay, but way too custom for Magic. I suppose you could use it for cardistry. Some gameplay, and a collector's deck. That's really where this falls. So that's it. That is the look at Ascension from Steve Minty. Another great pair of decks from Steve. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed this look. Make sure to subscribe for more deck reviews and unboxings, and I'll see you for the next one.